On my wedding day, I found my parents sitting next to a trash can. And what my fiancé said about it ended everything.
My name is Fonda Marshall. I was 29 years old on the day I was supposed to get married, the day everything I believed about love, family, and loyalty quietly fell apart. It started in a hallway. I was still in my wedding dress when I saw my father standing there, confused, holding his jacket, looking like he didn't quite belong. That alone didn't make sense. My parents were supposed to be at the front, table 1, right in the center. That's where they belonged. But they weren't. Instead, 9 members of my fiancé's family had taken those seats, and my parents? They had been moved to table 14, the last table in the room, right next to the kitchen doors and a trash bin. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake, something small, something fixable. But when I asked my fiancé about it, the way he responded, it didn't feel like a mistake. It felt intentional. That was the moment something cracked inside me, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to let the truth start leaking through everything I had been ignoring for the past 2 years. But to understand why that moment mattered so much, you need to understand where I come from. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone. My dad, Dave Marshall, worked as a plumber his entire life, 35 years, same job, same worn boots he refused to replace unless they were falling apart. My mom, Linda, worked in a school cafeteria. She knew every kid's name, their allergies, and sometimes even their struggles at home. If a child came to school hungry, she made sure they didn't leave that way. We didn't have much money, but we had everything that mattered: warm meals, open doors, and a kind of love that never made you feel small. I carried that with me into adulthood. I worked hard, became a nurse practitioner, paid off my debts, and built something of my own. I was proud of that life. Then I met Garrett Whitfield. He was different, charming, polished, confident. He came from a world that looked nothing like mine. His family owned businesses, properties, and influence. They were known, respected. And I won't lie, I was drawn into that world. At first, it felt like a fairy tale, until the small things started happening. His mother's subtle comments, the way she looked at my job, the way she compared me to other women Garrett had dated, women who, in her eyes, were more appropriate. I told myself it didn't matter, because I believed in him, because I believed love would balance everything out. I was wrong, and on my wedding day, that truth was waiting for me at table 14. But what I didn't realize yet was that the seating chart was only the beginning. What I was about to hear next would change everything, and there would be no going back.
Stay to the end, because what she does in front of 200 guests changes everything.
When I first met Garrett, it didn't feel complicated. It felt easy. We met at the clinic where I worked. He had brought his father in for a routine checkup. I remember noticing him right away. Confident posture, effortless smile, the kind of presence that draws attention without trying. He asked me out that same week. One dinner turned into another, then another. Soon we had a rhythm. He called every morning, showed up when I was sick, and remembered the little things I said in passing. For the first time, I felt like I had found someone who truly saw me. And when he proposed, it felt like everything had fallen perfectly into place. But looking back now, I realized something important. I wasn't just falling in love with him. I was slowly adjusting myself to fit into his world. His family, the Whitfields, lived differently. Their lives were polished, curated, and carefully presented. They had expectations, not just about success, but about image. And I didn't quite match that image. His mother, Constance, made that clear early on. She never said anything outright cruel, not directly, but her words always carried a quiet edge. "Oh, a community clinic?" she had said the first time we met. How interesting. It was subtle, dismissive, controlled. And every time it happened, Garrett would squeeze my hand and whisper, "She'll come around." So I waited. I overlooked things. During wedding planning, those small moments turned into patterns. Constance chose everything: the venue, the menu, the guest list. Even the tone of the entire event reflected her, not me. When my mom suggested adding one of her homemade dishes to the menu, Constance smiled politely and dismissed it like it didn't belong. I saw the way my mom's hands tightened in her lap. I should have said something then, but I didn't, because every time I hesitated, Garrett would say the same thing. "Let her have this. After the wedding, it'll just be us." So I made a decision. I told myself I was choosing peace now to build something stronger later. What I didn't realize was this: those small compromises weren't temporary, they were training. Every time I stayed quiet, I was teaching them how much I was willing to tolerate. And by the time the wedding day arrived, they had learned exactly how far they could go. The ceremony itself was perfect, beautiful even, the kind of moment people dream about. But perfection can be deceptive, because while I was walking down that aisle, smiling, holding on to hope, something else was already happening behind the scenes, something I wouldn't discover until after the ceremony, something that would make me question everything. Because when I stepped into the reception hall, I wasn't just walking into a celebration, I was walking into a setup, and I was the last person to realize it.
Stay to the end, because what she does in front of 200 guests changes everything.
After the ceremony, I slipped into the reception hall before the guests entered. It's a habit I picked up from working in healthcare. Double-check everything. Make sure nothing's out of place. At first glance, everything looked flawless. Elegant tables, soft lighting, perfectly arranged settings. It looked like something out of a magazine. But then I noticed something strange. Table 1, the most important table in the room, looked wrong. I walked over and picked up the place cards, one by one. Every name belonged to Garrett's side of the family, not a single Marshall. My chest tightened. That couldn't be right. I started checking other tables. Table 2, table 3, table 5. Nothing. And then I found them. Table 14, in the very back of the room, right next to the kitchen doors. The chairs didn't even match the rest of the venue. They were simple, padded folding chairs, the kind used as backups. A service cart sat nearby, stacked with dirty glasses. And right there, on that table, were my parents' names. I just stood there staring at them, trying to process what I was seeing, trying to convince myself there had to be an explanation. I found the wedding coordinator and asked what happened. Her response was simple. "Mrs. Whitfield made changes this morning. She said you approved them." I hadn't, not even close. In that moment, everything became clear. This wasn't an accident, this was a decision, and if I said nothing, it would stay that way. I imagined my parents sitting there, my dad straightening his tie, pretending it didn't matter, my mom quietly enduring it, smiling through discomfort like she always did. They wouldn't complain, they never did, but that didn't make it okay, because this wasn't just about seating, it was about respect. And if I allowed this, it wouldn't stop here. This would become the pattern. Every holiday, every gathering, every moment where they would be quietly placed in the background. I couldn't let that happen, so I went to find Garrett. I thought he would fix it. I thought he would understand. I was wrong. Because what he said next wasn't just disappointing, it revealed exactly who he really was, and that truth hit harder than anything I had seen so far.
If you believe family comes first, hit like right now.
I found Garrett in the dressing room, adjusting his cufflinks like nothing was wrong. Calm, composed, unbothered. I asked him directly, why were my parents moved? He barely looked at me. Mom made some adjustments. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. That's when something shifted inside me. I tried again, explained where they were seated, the kitchen, the trash, the last table. He sighed, like I was the problem. "Can we not do this right now?" he said. "Not now, not ever." That was always his answer. I kept pushing, hoping, just hoping for some sign that he cared, but instead he said something I'll never forget. "The people at table 1 are important. More important than my parents." He didn't say it directly, but he didn't need to. In that moment, I realized something terrifying. He had known. He knew what his mother had done, and he chose to let it happen. I walked out, trying to steady myself, trying to think, but before I could go far, I heard voices coming from inside the room. His mother's voice, calm, controlled, judging. "They look poor," she said. "You can't have them at the front." And then Garrett responded, "You're right." That was it. That was the moment everything ended. Not loudly, not dramatically, just completely. Because there are things you can forgive, but you can't unhear the truth about how someone sees the people you love. I stepped away from the door, and for the first time all day, I felt clear. No confusion, no doubt, just clarity. I wasn't about to marry this man. But walking away quietly wasn't enough, not after what they had done, and what I chose to do next would leave 200 people in complete silence. I found my parents at table 14, exactly where I knew they'd be. My dad sitting straight, trying to look comfortable. My mom adjusting her dress, pretending everything was fine. They smiled when they saw me, like nothing was wrong. That hurt more than anything, because they deserved better, and they were too kind to demand it. I told them to stay where they were. Then I walked to the center of the room, past every table, every guest, every carefully crafted illusion. And I took the microphone. At first, people thought I was about to give a speech. They smiled, clapped lightly. But then I started talking, and the room went quiet. I told them everything, the seating change, the disrespect, the truth about what had been said. I pointed to table 14, and I made them look, really look, at what had been done. The room shifted. You could feel it. People started to understand. And then I said the one thing that mattered most. I will not marry into a family that treats mine like they don't belong. Silence. Complete silence. I removed my veil, placed it down, and walked away, not just from the wedding, but from everything that came with it. I didn't look back, because I already knew. Some decisions don't need second chances. They just need courage. But what happened after I walked out, the calls, the fallout, and the secret I discovered weeks later, that part of the story is even more powerful than the ending. Comment, not table.